All right, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll call the regular meeting to order. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending tonight's meeting. We'll start with roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Sarda. Here. Hoffman.
Present.
Minor.
Here.
Moser.
Here.
Schron.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
City Manager Leone.
Here.
City Attorney Denver.
Here. Thank you, Al. You have before you the minutes of the regular meeting of November 12th, 2019. What is your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes by the commissioners? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission. Just a couple things. Our mission is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that create opportunities for everyone to learn, engage, and thrive. I don't know what I'm hearing there, but something. Also, I was going to bring forward a couple of the points that Commissioner Schramm and Mayor Johnson talked about with the National League of Cities, but instead I'll talk about the not as fun and exciting stuff. A lot of our sessions revolved around some of the same issues that we're having. It's being experienced all over the country: affordable housing, downtown development, working on making your community as inclusive as possible, as well as designing your community for the aging population. So the baby boomer subsect is getting larger and larger, and how are we designing our communities with that generation in mind? Also, lots to talk about the census. So we had an opportunity to learn a few things more about the census and get more in touch with what's happening around the country to get the count out of the census. I learned that our most vulnerable populations for not being counted in Yankton are the very young, so under 5, and the very elderly. So we'll be working with the Complete Count Committee to make sure that those populations specifically are being counted, and making sure that we're able to get as much of a complete and accurate count as possible. Lots of talk about mental health as well, which I thought was very interesting. I learned a lot about really mental health epidemic or crisis that we're talking about, and I think that mental health is always an issue, has always been an issue in our communities, but at this point we're evolving enough to be more sensitive to it and understanding that it impacts everything we do, from education to policing to community design. So a lot of great stuff there we'll talk about as we go on, but a lot of ideas to bring back to the department heads and to you all as commissioners that we might be able to implement. So thank you for that opportunity. We had a good time. It was nice and warm and sunny, like 70 degrees. So I don't know what happened, but it's going to change. Speaking of that change, Adam has assured me the plows are ready, and we're going to be probably putting them to good use this week. As I predicted earlier in the summer, that Thanksgiving we'd have a storm. So we'll be ready to go. I'd ask the public to keep abreast of Facebook and our website for any weather-related emergencies or our plowing times and announcements that we make. Also, we may need to change our solid waste and recycling routes. Those are changed already because of the holiday, so it might be extra confusing, but we'll make sure that we're putting information out. We just need people to make sure they're checking. We don't know what that's going to look like because we don't know what the weather's going to look like, but we will be putting out information according to that schedule. Also, Holiday Parade of Lights, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, which is before we meet again. So I know Brittany's got a really great lineup already, and more all the time coming. So we're looking forward to seeing everyone there. Hopefully there'll be a little snow, but it'll be warm, and we'll be able to enjoy that event. Wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be closed on Thursday and Friday. So we'll be back in the office on Monday. If there's no questions for me, I'll let you move on to your agenda.
Are there any questions for the city manager? All right, moving on. Now is the time for public appearances, so if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda, seeing no members of the public in the audience tonight, I don't think that's going to happen. But hello, everyone out there in Facebook land. Moving on to the consent agenda. Number 1 is establishing December 9th, 2019 as the date for the public hearing for the transfer of location of a retail on-off sale malt beverage license for July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 from Morgan LLC doing business at South Point at 1101 Broadway, and this would be going to Morgan LLC doing business as South Point Gaming Lounge, again at 1101 Broadway. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Everyone in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? It passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to old business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 19-239 and resolution 19-61 as the date for a public hearing on the special assessment roll for removal of noxious vegetation and abatement. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Strong.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under old business is consideration of memorandum 19-246 regarding the request for a special events on sale liquor license for December 10th from the Chamber of Commerce, and this would be for an event at First Dakota National Bank. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Strong.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to new business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 19-240 regarding resolution 19-68, which is a conditional use permit for an 85-foot tall radio tower at 407 West 11th Street. And Becker Enterprises would be the owner. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about what's being proposed here? I know it's reading the memorandum, it's an 85-foot tower, but it kind of fits in with the surroundings there.
So the location would be directly to the west, actually on the west side of the building of what used to be the former county highway shop and then was Yankton Motors property. The proposed tower is a lattice type, self-supporting, in other words, no guy wires, 85-foot tower. It is not intended for radio broadcast transmissions, which was one of the questions we got in our public hearing at the Planning Commission, because those sorts of transmissions can cause some distortion or disturbances with other radio signals. It is not. It is intended for communications between multiple radio stations, just direct radio feeds between properties owned by the same owner from here to Norfolk, basically. It is a conditional use permit within an industrial district, and as you know, conditional use permits are things that we have by ordinance already agreed are allowable as long as we go through a process and recognize certain things that we can have influence on. In this case, we looked at compatibility with adjacent land uses. Again, the area is zoned industrial, and there are a number of structures within a block or two of that location that exceed the height of this proposed structure. Noise, lighting, we can talk about aesthetics, but we're fairly limited in what we can impact in that respect. And after a public hearing process where adjacent property owners were notified and notices were in the newspaper, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the request as proposed.
Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Number 2 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-241, recommending approval of resolution 19-69, authorizing hangar land leases at Chan Gurney Municipal Airport. What is your pleasure?
Move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, again, can you describe for us what's being proposed here?
Sure. This is the very happy culmination of a years-long process that we've been involved with as far as our land leases for the privately owned hangars out at the airport. As you know, the city owns the property. That property, however, was purchased with FAA funds, so there's a number of strings attached to what we can do there. One of the things we can do there is lease to private hangar owners, people who have airplanes that operate out there, lease them space to put a building on it. So they maintain ownership of the building, they pay taxes on the building as a private improvement. We own the land under it, and we lease that property at basically what's an incented rate to promote development at our airport and activity at our airport. We've had many years of confusing lease agreement issues to work through, with language different in different types of leases, multiple leases for the same property for different purposes, you know, a hangar and a gas tank and a parking area. This lease document that you have before you clears that up substantially by combining footprints of leaseholders, of individual leaseholders. Clears up the responsibilities if a hangar for some reason ever has to be moved, which we didn't really clear up before. It puts all leases, and this is probably the biggest benefit, puts all leases on the same timeline for renewal. And then when a transfer occurs, the new leasee will just assume the lease and get in the same schedule. And it extends the term of the leases, which is a fairness issue that we had with many of the hangar owners out there. It would be tough for somebody to invest $40,000 to $100,000+ in buying a building in a situation where their leases, would be fairly short term. So this is a little bit longer term, and it's renewable. And it also, to the city's benefit, provides a defined tool or process by which we can adjust lease rates out there too, which we didn't really have included in our previous document. So if this is approved by the City Commission, we'll get this new lease document out to our leaseholders, and I think it will be to everybody's benefit. And I'm hoping that all the leaseholders will see that and joyfully renew and sign the new lease by the 10th of January.
Dave, thank you to everyone else who worked on this project. Commissioners, is there any more discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-238 regarding an agreement between the City of Yankton and the Yankton Area Senior Citizens Center. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. This agreement there are no changes since last year. Is there any more commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 4 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-243 regarding a bid award for the annual supply of transport tank wagon petroleum products for Chan Gurney Airport for 2020. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 5 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-244 and resolution 19-70 regarding the library contracts between the City of Yankton and Yankton County. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. City Manager or Dana, did you want to discuss the changes that are proposed for this year?
Sure, I will with Dana's help. As you know, we have an annual agreement with Yankton County to provide a library for county residents. In the past, the county provided, I believe, $24,000 to the library per year, and under that agreement, non-municipal residents in Yankton County were paying $5 per household for their card. This year, the Yankton County decided to cut the funding for the library by close to $10,000, down to $15,000. So the library board discussed that, and they were left to make changes to the agreement. So Dana and her board have proposed that a non-resident library card is $20 per year for those households to reflect the offset and the cost that, or the expense, I guess, that Yankton County is no longer providing the library, or at least not providing this year. So I don't know, Dana, if you have other comments about that, but basically we have to change our operations if we don't have the funding.
Yeah, I think we have a handout that we have ready to give to patrons to explain the difference in cost and what that change will look like for them. And then we're also going to have contact information on there for county commissioners so that they can contact them and let them know how they feel about the library, and hopefully we will see changes in the future.
And this would take effect January 1st?
Yes.
Roughly how many county residents would get a card?
We have 1,060 right now.
Are there any more commission questions or discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 6 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-242 regarding Chaplain Weber's request to attend peer support training. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And just so everyone in the audience understands, this would be Commissioner Jerry Weber, who's also Chaplain Weber for our fire department. Jerry, did you want to tell us what this training would entail?
Sergeant Bruning has completed this training about a year ago, and from what I can see in the material that I got is that it gives us training to help us to set up a peer support group, which is, the literature is showing that first responders do much better when they can get mental health support and emotional support from each other. So, and this is obviously an area that's close to my heart. So not only is this a peer support training, but there's also a 3-day course in suicide prevention for first responders. And I've spoken to Chief and Chief of the Fire Department, Tom Kurtenbach, and I would just like to be able to get this training so that we could work together and work out some peer support groups for all the first responders in the community.
I'll just add that the prices that were listed, the cost of the training listed, was the sort of worst case scenario, but because of Commissioner Weber, Chaplain Weber's sort of quick action and Colleen's ability to lock some things in, they were be able to get a special rate of, I think, $40 a night at the hotel. So we're going to be far south of that 2,300.
Actually, it's military housing, there's no hotel.
It's not a hotel, so maybe you're getting what you pay for. I don't know. Never been in the military, but I know Jerry can handle it. So anyway, it is far south of what it's listed there. So we don't have this budgeted, but the commission has funds in their travel budget. Also, we could split it up between the two departments that would most use it. But in reality, we have used Commissioner Weber in both departments. She's a huge asset for us as chaplain, not just for the emergency personnel, but sometimes we all need a little emotional support. Sometimes working with the public's tough, and sometimes it's stressful, and she's really filled a hole there that we didn't know we had. So I think anything she learns and can bring back to staff and to help us train our staffs and be there for each other will be beneficial. So I'd recommend the commission send Commissioner Weber away, but that she comes back.
And we didn't specify in the motion, but I think it should come out of the commission's budget, if since there are funds there.
Yes, there's plenty of money there.
Is there any more commission discussion? I'd just like to thank Commissioner Weber for taking the time to get this training. I think it will really pay dividends for our employees. So thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-245 regarding a charitable donation agreement for the Fox Run Golf Course. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy or Todd, can you describe what's occurring here for the public?
Sure.
Thank you.
This is sort of a cleanup and what I call a figure-outer of a Great Life golf course. Sometimes we move ahead with things and then history comes back, and sometimes it haunts us, or sometimes it just comes back and it's things we didn't know. Back in the early 1990s, the City of Yankton and Lucan Memorials entered into a 10-year T-sign agreement where Lucan Memorial was allowed to construct and install T-signs at each tee box at Fox Run. That agreement has expired, and at this time, the Lucan Memorial would like to just donate those T-signs to the city and that agreement. It's a generous donation since it was their expense to go ahead and build them in the first place. So once those T-signs are transferred, if the commission approves that, then Lucan Memorials would not have any more obligations for maintenance or repair. Since that expired long ago anyway, I think that it's probably good to get that off the books. And so this is basically a cleanup, and because of their generosity, allows us to clean it up. And now Great Life, we would then allow Great Life Golf and Fitness to sell the advertising that's placed on those signs as long as they are the leaseholder. Is that, Todd's nodding his head, so I did a good job.
Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Number 8 under new business is a memorandum supporting first reading of ordinance number 1029, the second supplement of the 2019 annual appropriation ordinance number 1011, and setting December 9th, 2019 as the time for a second reading and public hearing of said ordinance. What is your pleasure?
Move the memo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item?
Technically, all you're doing is introducing it. You don't need a motion and a second, so I took it as an introduction by Commissioner Weber.
All right, I guess it's introduced then. Number 9 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-248 and resolution 19-71 regarding purchase of 2 patrol vehicles for the police department. What is your pleasure?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson. Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 10 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-250 and resolution 19-72 regarding a vehicle purchase from the state of South Dakota bid list for the City of Yankton Public Works Department for a 1-ton chassis truck. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Minor.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 11 under new business is consideration of memorandum 19-251 and resolution 19-73 regarding the purchase of an unmarked vehicle for the police department. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Mosier.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson. Sarda.
Aye.
Hoffner.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. There being no other business on tonight's agenda, I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual, litigation, and personnel matters under South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Is anyone opposed? We are adjourned into executive session.